Yep, and everybody's here that said they were going to be here.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the open meeting tonight. Meeting is now called to order. Deputy Clerk Chris Crable, could you please call the roll?
Councilman Noah,
Here.
Councilman Griffin,
Here.
Councilman Burrow,
Yeah.
Councilman Robinette,
Here.
Mayor Jones,
Here.
Councilman Lipka,
Here.
and then Councilman Nelson said she wouldn't be present this evening.
She has been excused. We have a quorum present. At this time, we would like to welcome our new city manager, Mr. Eric Ostenberg. Would you please take the floor?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm happy to be here. Still in the quite the long, protracted process of moving in. Our stuff finally arrives tomorrow, so we'll spend the weekend unpacking finally. I'm happy to be here and looking forward to being settled in. So tonight, kind of John will be handling most of these items tonight, as these are items that John has been working on for the past few months. So I'll now just go ahead and hand the floor over to John.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and council, it's always a pleasure to be in front of you and discussing city issues. I just got a text earlier, about a half hour ago, that Don had an emergency and he's not going to be able to make it tonight. So I'm going to try to do the best I can on CBDG streets. I don't know everything, but I can do a good fill-in. So our application will be due August 30th. We had to get an extension. Many other cities are getting an extension as well due to the 10-day public hearing. Before we leave today, I would like to see if we can come together on an exact date for our next, for the special hearing. We will have to post this 10 days prior to that meeting. So before we leave tonight, I would like to see if I can get a consensus on the date we can have that public hearing for council. So the CBDG grant for 2022, Don has sent the information in the emails. It should be all the streets in green. The streets in green are our worst streets, and those are also the ones that have been approved for the CBDG streets. I know we were able to get the Woodwind area on that as well.
Woohoo!
Yes, but obviously we want to try to do streets in each ward. Our goal this year is to actually have input. Years in past, you know, Matt would just say, we have streets, and something me and the mayor have talked about from the beginning is, you know, we want to have council more involved with the CBDG grant and the process of selecting streets in your wards. Now, obviously, some of this money may not be able to do all the streets, but we're going to try to do as much as we can. Don has sent out that the thing with the green streets, and some of the streets that he highlighted that we may be able to really look at that are some of our worst streets are like the Highmont area, somewhere Marvin area off of Ruggles and including Ruggles, and then also the Woodwind area and the Atmore area as well. He also included Hutton as another street that we should look at. But I'm interested, and I'm sure Don will be interested to hear the streets that you all would like to really have us take a look at and have that applied for in the CBDG grant.
Can you tell me when he sent the email that has the streets in green? Because the only thing I'm finding from him came from May, and that was the little strips we put down on the roads in the
It is, I'm pulling it up right now. Chris, if you pull it up before me, please jump in. We just had it. It looked like Monday. This week, no, that was a grant. Here it is.
Did that go to all of council?
Yep. June 9th.
John or Chris, are you able to share your screen of that map?
Chris, can you pull up that email on June 9th or?
Yeah, I'm working on pulling it up right now. Give me 1 second.
Yeah,
And after, well, while we're pulling that up, and there's a little bit of a delay, I would like to also talk about a street that is going to be getting done, and we're going to be bringing it to council, I believe, for authorization to sign the contract. Ford is a street that has had numerous issues with, and we already have the bid for that, and that is going to become our model street for the city of Ferguson. That will be brought to you at the council meeting for authorization for Eric. This street right now has no like valley in it, and that's why some of the problems that we have exist today. This will also have speed humps placed on it. So we're trying to do multiple things at one time. Replace the street and also put in some speed deterrents. But this will continue. This is what our streets that we would like to see happen to many of them. Now, they're not going to be speed bumps, as we talked about before, but it will be like a longer. So it's almost like 10 feet or 5 or 6 feet, up to 10 feet before it goes back down.
so Chief Hampton, they had those all over Alabama. I mean, they have them all over here, but I noticed, and I've also been doing my homework and I earmarked some of these articles to send to you and Eric, but you know, there's a whole lot of different types of speed bumps. And when we are telling people that they can't have a speed bump, we're talking about the original ones that are just like a big dead snake or log in the wood in the middle of the road that you'd run over. But the ones you're talking about are the rises that have an angle up, flatten out, have an angle down. And then there's the ones that have this space. There's 3 in a row, but they have a space between the 2 so that the fire trucks and stuff can go over them. So there's a lot of different options out there. And then I've actually priced them on eBay and on Amazon too, because they're quite inexpensive if neighborhoods, like private neighborhoods, wanted to invest in them.
Yes, ma'am. And that's why they are now the speed humps, because what they found is the speed bumps actually destroy the bigger trucks. And we don't want to destroy the suspension on the trucks. Also, so if we get back to the grant, I know there's $155,300 that we'll be able to apply for and hopefully get. I know that will not do a lot of our streets, but if we can look at even doing partial of it or the worst sections of it to optimize what we can do, that would be something I'm sure Don would be interested in talking to you further on. Chris is being able to pull up. I sent him the email. So as you see in the dark green areas or the green areas, Chris, can you shorten that? There we go. And the green areas are the streets that are qualified for the CBDG. So, and I know a lot of the councilwomen have driven these streets, and I know you know these streets better than anybody. So that is another reason we are looking for your input. The one street that I think, you know, just myself, because of the fire trucks and stuff like that, is if you look down where Ruggles ends and comes back up, I believe it's Marvin. That area of the roadway and parts of Ruggles is really needing to be replaced. I know I've talked to Miss Noah about Ruggles numerous times as well. But like I said, we would be very interested in everybody's input tonight.
So I'm a little confused.
I definitely agree with what you said about Ruggles and Marvin, because it's that little small street and it curves down. I don't know if we would be able to include airline in the end and beginning, because it's just a little bit, but because it's right there with them, you know, with those streets.
Yes, ma'am.
Not the entire airline, just the, the end and the beginning.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what we have to do. We have to look at our sections, and we have to be, I guess, frugal with our money. We have to know what we can and can't do with our money, and we have to be able to say, okay, this section from this address to this address needs a complete redo, but yet we can fill the potholes and do better the next time around, hopefully. So I know those streets are the ones that I am seeing that me and Miss Noah have talked about. I also know that I will also have in the area of oh goodness, right there off of Dade, like South Marguerite area. I believe it's Walters and Rouse, that area as well. But what we could do is have every councilwoman submit the streets to our city manager. And then this way, Don can go over the streets with the city manager and then give everybody, kind of try to rank them on which ones are worse and what we can and can't do. Like Miss Noah said, if we could do partial of the airline in the beginning and at the end, and then be able to get a little bit of Marvin as well, that may be a solution that we can look into.
Okay, Councilwoman Griffin, she has her hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, this question, I don't know who exactly to direct it to, but maybe someone can help me out here. I remember us having something that kind of categorized the damage of the streets. Is there a way that can be overlapped with this area? So we know this area is CBDG money, but we also have the categories of the streets that are listed here
Yes, ma'am.
because that would, for me, in terms of, what we're looking at on surface is not necessarily the same as what's underground. We know that, and we've talked about how deep, when we replace a street, how deep we have to go. I know Matt had originally designated some streets in the 3rd Ward to be done, but because of, the certain amount of money that was had, there were only slabs that were done. And we know now that there are problems that still existed. So I guess that would be my question, can we compile that on top of these where we show the actual categories of the streets? And I guess the question for me would be, were those categorized based off of what we saw above ground, or was that based off of the last time work was done on those streets?
I can answer that all, Ms. Griffin. Yes, we can do that overlay. And I will have Don make that and get that to Eric so he can send it to you. The last time we had our streets graded, it was with the Weiss group or Weiss group. I may be pronouncing it wrong, but they did all of our streets. They graded all of our streets. Now, some of that, it's been a little bit. I don't know the exact year they did that. Okay, but I will make sure that that's also provided to you. But as you know, some of these streets have deteriorated a little bit more so than other ones. So, I think it would be also good to look at some of those, like, your streets in your ward really well. And you may look at the map and go, oh, well, we've been able to do a little bit better here, but we need to really get this section here. And I think that's the input that we're really looking for, because you guys walk your streets, you guys, drive your streets more than anybody. And I think that's why we want the input.
Well, and you've asked,
Because we want everyone to feel like their ward has you have an input in your ward about your streets, instead of having the PW person pick a street like Matt used to do and just tell us this is what's going to be done. By working on the streets together, everyone will get a better understanding of what's going on in each other ward.
and then also you've been asking for this for quite a while now, for many months. So I mean, I know like myself, we've talked about different streets in Ward 1, and I know Naquita's talked about different streets and Fran's talked about different streets. So it's still beneficial for us to put it on, make a list on paper and turn it in. But in the meanwhile, we have been having those conversations and you have been collecting that information, if I'm correct, right, Chief Hampton?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I believe Don's, whatever we get, whatever I get, I always send to Don. So Don should have all that. But now also, since we've separated, the parks and the public works, we are out there, as everybody hopefully sees, out there filling the potholes that we can. We also have a slab replacement machine that we also have currently at the public works that we're gonna get out there and replace some slabs ourselves if they're not too far gone. Obviously, we don't have the skill set as most of these street departments do, the actual people that work with concrete all the time, but we can go ahead and repair some of the streets that are not as bad, you know what I'm saying, are as far gone as where, you might have a 6 or 4 or 5 foot or 6 foot hole underneath. Those streets have to be done by a skilled concrete, I guess, finisher. But yeah, if anybody look, I will make sure that overlay goes out. I will also make sure that the date's on there. And then if you could just send back to Don or Eric rather, we can go forward from there. I'm hoping that we could have some of these streets done. Well, we're gonna have to know when the streets by the time we have the special hearing. And so we're gonna have to post it. I talked to Octavia, we can post it immediately, but we just want to know the date that you council can make it, to have a full quorum.
Councilwoman Borough has her hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks so much about Ford. I appreciate that because we've been working on that for a while. So I appreciate all that you've done. What I'm confused about is last time we talked about this, it was understood that it was going to be Don and you and people from that department that would go through these streets and take a look and decide on which ones needed to come forward.
Yes,
We
ma'am.
had already turned in and had a list of what streets we thought we needed looked at, and now we're going back again saying, go back. I'm confused about the go back and forth. I mean, I don't understand the reasoning for it.
So on the street list, I don't have a full street list from every council person in their ward. Not every councilwoman gave me streets. I think I've only got a few councilwomen that have done that. And so, Don and myself have looked at a lot of these streets, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we're pleasing the councilwomen in the wards and the ward itself. I could pick a street and say it's not traveled as much as another street, and that's something that, we want to get the most bang for our buck. Obviously, we're going to look at all of them, but we're going to bring back to you the streets that, we think would be best suited with this $155,000.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did not know that you had not received what you had requested. I thought since you had Ward 2, I just thought everybody just did what you asked to do. My mistake. Thank you.
Councilwoman Robinette.
So I guess my point is similar to Councilwoman Burrow in that, like, I knew Ford was going to be done in Ward 2. We have people that, bring up different streets all the time, but I would hope that there would be a kind of a marriage of what we're hearing about from the public, as well as what you guys already know are rated D and F in our neighborhoods, because, if it's just a simple pothole, like the CDBG money can be better spent for things that are structurally unsound, and it could just be the people on that street aren't the vocal ones. So I want to make sure that we're kind of looking at both ends of that to make sure that we're coming up with the right ones to do with the money that we have.
Absolutely, Ms. Robinette. I agree with you 100%. And so really it's just getting a little bit more input from the council ladies. So, Don's going to drive these streets. He's going to drive them with Corey. He's going to, and we're going to have that final decision on the special hearing night.
Councilwoman Lipka.
So I would also kind of add to what the other two councilwomen have said, in the sense that if I remember, and I want to remind others, when Don was discussing this a couple months ago, or maybe it was a couple weeks ago, he did emphasize the fact that there are some streets that have, major infrastructure underneath the slabs that are eroding away. And that those were the ones he was going to be focusing our CDBG dollars on, because that's, it's free money and it's a big job. So we want to move that money over there. So I do think that there is that awareness going on right now from the conversations that we've had in the past, but I just want to reiterate the importance of it, as the other councilwomen have done.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes, ma'am. And also, we get a lot of streets that, people to call and say, hey, you need to get this done. There's a 4-foot hole. But we also have to remember, they're not in the CBDG area. And so I may have some streets from you, but this is more of a detailed map of what streets that we really can do.
What determines the area? Is there?
I'm not an expert on this. I'm not going to try to be trained.
Okay.
What determines the area is low income to moderate, according to the census tract.
Okay.
I can send you. I'll see what else I can send you on this. And I will also include that with the overlay.
So Mayor Jones, is this the reestablished information from the most recent census?
No, it is not.
So when
We have not
will that-
received that.
Okay, so when will that affect our CDBG dollars?
Our CDBG dollars, okay. You want to answer, John?
Yeah,
Okay.
that will be affected in the 2023 grant. This is the 2022 grant. So the census are still coming out, since everything's been delayed or pushed off because of COVID. So, and I believe now that the census is starting to come out, that it will be the 2023 grant. And that's where we'll have a different little map as well.
Got it.
Mhm.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay.
Next on the agenda.
Let me look at the agenda. Try and juggle like 5 things.
Special events.
Special
Thank you,
event.
Chris, for putting the map up.
Thank you, Chris. At this time, I would like to call on Dave Musgrave to explain special events. But I do want to explain one thing before we go any further. We had Juneteenth, and during Juneteenth, what we did is we used that as our sample of how we could find out how much we need to charge. So on the application, we actually worked out what money that the city would try to recoup for the expenses that we are putting out. Now, obviously, we did not charge anybody because we have not brought this to council yet. So it was my understanding, Dave's understanding, once we get council's approval, that's when we'll go forward and start charging people. During the Taste of Ferguson, we're doing the same thing. We're trying to figure out, just to make sure that everybody else knows that next year you may have to also have this amount of money for the city as well. The one thing that I've talked to Dave about numerous times is and Dave agrees with me, we do not want to price ourselves out of events. And that's where, me personally, you will see like some of these charges, they're not little money, and that's what me and Dave are really trying to work out right now. So Dave, I'd like to turn it over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris, could I share my screen here in a minute? Would that be okay? I was going to kind of show everybody where this is at right now, where we're going. First, I sent out an email to everybody back on July 1, kind of outlining this process, attached the initial application process and all those lovely things. Give me 1 second to get down here. All right. So if you go to our city website right now, this is the park site. and you go to facility and park rentals here. Go to special events over here on the left. It basically takes you to our special event area. Walks through kind of what constitutes you needing a special event permit, what the process is. And then here at the bottom, if you click here, there's actually the fillable PDF. Walks through all the processes, kind of step by step, what you need to have, what you need to fill out. The actual application right now is a fillable PDF. So you can type straight on this document on the website, save it, email it over to me as attachment, and that's how we do it. To outline the process, I apologize for my children again. Basically, they contact the Parks Department. We direct them to this website to get the application. They complete it. And then I take it and I send it all to the department heads. Department heads kind of look at their calendars, make sure they have the staff they're going to need to make sure this happen, make sure we have the resources available, and they send it back to me. I then would send it on to the city manager, and they would kind of go through the fees that are the last page of this. I'll go ahead and scroll down to that so you can kind of get an idea what those look like. But basically all the department heads would fill out these fees as applicable to the application. So for example, PD, if they're going to need 2 officers for 8 hours, they fill this out accordingly. This is how much it's going to cost. Public Works, they requested tents, tables, everything else by line item, they'd fill this out. We get a grand total down here for the cost, goes off to the city manager, depending if they're looking to make this a city sponsored event, city partnered event, those type of things. The city manager at that time can give them a discount or a reduced rate based on how much it's going to impact the community and what kind of benefit it's going to bring to Ferguson. This is just kind of helping us streamline the process. For years, I remember when I first started here, we would rent out a park, and I remember it just being, well, that's $2,000 or that's $1,500. And there was really no reasoning or no method behind it. It was just what they used to charge to use the facilities and kind of how it went. And I think we scared some groups away with some of those costs sometimes. And there really wasn't, like I said, a structured reason for the fees. So this first and foremost gives the person who's interested in the event kind of an idea of what they're looking at as far as cost, but then also gives us some wiggle room to kind of bring that back if we do think it's an event that's going to benefit the community and benefit the citizens. So that's kind of a overlook from overhead. Our plan would be to make this effective on January 1st moving forward, and then we can kind of go from there. We know we have a lot of events that come up between now and the end of the year. So we kind of wanted to give people, like John had said, a little bit of leeway there. As people have been emailing these to me, I have been telling them this year we're not going to charge or we don't have a fee for it. But just so you know, in the future, there very well may be a nominal fee for this, just that type of thing. But if there's questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. I see Linda's hand's already raised.
So I would also like to encourage, like I've gone through and filled this out already for Taste in Ferguson. And so just to let people know, you may want to put it somewhere in the application fee that every event is not going to answer every question. Some of these questions are not pertinent to like you're not going to need insurance for a block party. Yep. Or you might, you never know, but things like that. And then the other thing I would also say too, is that people need to know when they fill this out, it doesn't mean you're automatically in. The city can still approve or disapprove. Like for instance, my event, Taste in Ferguson, is traditionally an outdoor festival event. But due to the fact that we have the rising COVID numbers, the city manager and myself and you, we all decided that this would be more beneficial to go to the boxed version of this event. So there is going to always be a city approval process as well. And then the other thing I would ask, I have a question about, is where it says private or public event. If somebody comes to you and says it's a private event, what oversight or what abilities does the city have in that regard? Like if it's a public event, you can approve or disapprove, but if it's a private event, I mean, I know you can still approve or disapprove, but let's say you approve the private event, but then something occurs. I mean, what's your oversight process for that? Do you have something in set?
Truthfully, in the past, and I don't have a good answer right now because there's been a lot of stuff in courts recently, I'll be upfront with you. We used to require limited liability policies from people in the amount of $1 million to cover us if something happened. But supposedly there's been some issues with that in Missouri and other states recently. So we actually have a call into Apollo to kind of hash that out. A good example would be the event space, for example. We ran it out for a private party. They're going to have alcohol served, that type of thing. We require a $1 million liquor liability license to be in place for that, naming the city of Ferguson as insured. But supposedly that can also cause us to be liable now in the court's eyes in certain scenarios. So we have an email out to Apollo. He's looking into it. We're trying to figure it out. But right now, there's honestly not a good answer. The answer that I would have normally given you is, oh, we require them to get their own insurance, the amount of $1 million, names the city of Ferguson, so we're covered. But evidently, that's not the catch-all at this point.
Well, I would also throw at you from the years of industry work that I have in weddings. When you have a private event, you have a wedding, it's a venue where you have to bring in your own food, your own drinks, and that kind of thing. If you can request that they hire licensed or bonded, people who have already met all the fees and requirements. You can't just hire your buddy Joe to serve beer.
Well, and that's something that we always require. They have to have a valid Missouri liquor license. They have to have insurance, all those things. Because the city, AKA our department, has our own liquor license, we don't want to jeopardize that. So if something happens, we don't want to come back on us, basically. So, yes.
Councilwoman Tony Burrow.
Dave, I have a question about, Linda called it oversight. I'm gonna call it SOP. Right. When we have individuals that come and want to use the facilities when we're doing events, and they come up with a good enough story, then it changes whether they have to pay certain fees. We might have somebody to go and borrow something from another city, and they come in and say, oh, this is a gift in kind. How do we stop this foolishness that we have run up against when there should be some language in an SOP? And what I did is I went through this form and just did a mock. I think it would be good to have a mock of what we did for the June 10th and let folks see this is what it should have been and it wasn't. This is what should have happened and it didn't, because we need that information, I think, to get people on the right page. And I got to tell you, you did a fabulous job. It's simply lovely how this was done. I appreciate how you're working on the SOPs and getting things out. Thank you. It's
No problem.
We need to have that SOP. We need to have language.
No, definitely. And one of the big things, in my opinion, is this for office use that I have in front of you right now. And it's classifying the city partnered event, city sponsored event, city approved or private. Because I think that this should dictate a lot as far as what type of discount or what type of fees we're charging them. And then it also in turn gives them language below that we will do some advertising for them or allow them to use our logos moving forward. And I think that this kind of helps in that scenario as we're moving forward with that.
Right.
I would also,
and I would, one second, Linda, I would also say about that logo, we had a serious situation about that logo. And I think what some people were understanding was completely wrong. And so that needs to be spelled out a little better, because folks that called me, it was not the right language. If you're going to use that logo, just because you got a buddy coming along and you let them use the logo, but it really was not approved by the city. And when you talk about we're going to do some advertising for them, that doesn't mean that bring whatever you're doing and it's going to be city run and city approved. There's a whole difference between that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm just mainly talking to everybody on this phone call to understand we just can't loan out our logo.
Okay, Councilwoman Griffin had her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. My question was really in regard, it was kind of along the lines of the city partner, city sponsor, but just, with the consent decree, we're going to be doing a lot of community engagement and things of that nature. And so I'm just thinking ahead in terms of different events that we put on like that. I guess I'm thinking like, will somebody from staff, if there's something that we're doing in terms of outreach, like will this be a requirement to fill out and complete? And then like, how will that work? I'm thinking in terms of like the MPSC outreach. I'm thinking, what else could, just neighborhood associations. I know that's another, I'm trying to think what else will we use, just basically things that are associated with the consent decree where we're required to go out and actually, hold something to kind of do some outreach. Or is this also going to be a part of what will need to be filled out, just for clarity purposes?
Oh, yeah. The answer I'm going to give you is my opinion. I don't know that it's set in stone by any means, but it's how I felt when I was doing this documentation. So it could change. I'll just start with that. I personally think when we're talking about city events, actual events that staff time and we're inventing. So a good example is my concert series, movie nights, things that we put together as city staff, whether it's the consent decree stuff with PD. I don't think they need to go through this process. But if it's something where it's a citizen led, whether it's a neighborhood association or something along those lines, then I think it would be beneficial, primarily because there's a lot of times where we put our city events on calendars for room usage, for park usage, for pavilion usage, but and we know that internally because we've communicated it with each other. But if it's coming from an outside source, whether it be a citizen or board or along those lines, it may not have been communicated to the right department or the right people. And I just don't want to see us overbooking a site without knowing it. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That pretty much answers it. Thank you.
Okay. And like I said, that's just my opinion. I don't know that that's the tell-all answer, but that's kind of how I felt when I was making it.
Okay, anyone else have a question for
Mayor,
Dave?
Mayor, I have my hand up.
Yeah,
So I want to, Dave, I also want to add on to what Councilwoman Burrow brought in. So I've used this form already and I like it. One thing I noticed that's not on here is any legal liabilities. So if somebody is out there using the logo on their event without the approval, and it has to be a signed approval, it's an approval document, then there needs to be a legal liability with swift action on it. And so I think we need to have some kind of legal liability built into this because it's basically a contract between whatever organization and the city. And I know I have all of that built into my contracts personally. So I do think we need to have that in there. And then I also think we need to, once this goes into effect, this goes carte blanche. It's anybody. Nobody gets to pull rank or pull a trump card. Or, everybody's treated 100% equally on this. So you don't get to say, hey, I'm a council member, or I'm a mayor, or I'm this, or I'm that, and run around the process. But I want to also ask you, are you still going into a conversation about the pricing, or is that something I can bring up now?
Oh, no, I'll be honest, I wanted to change some of this pricing. I actually was talking to City Manager Eric yesterday, and some of our staff time is low. All of our staff time here is just kind of general average of their hourly rates, but we all know a good example of PD, fire, anytime they're working after hours on one of these events, it's going to be overtime. So we should have it built in here at time and a half, if we're going to be honest with each other. The sad part is Lexi Miller is out in Mexico right now. So I couldn't contact her to get the general consensus of salaries in the last 2 days. But that's something I want to change. We also have some wiggle room on some of these other things. So this is a working document by any means. If you guys have suggestions or thoughts, if you want to email me, I'm more than happy to go back and forth. When I came up with these costs, and let me get back down to them. For example, the chairs, tables, those things, I just kind of went with local rental companies and tried to be under what they were charging because I thought that was fair. So Weinhardt tables, for example, they were charging $5 per chair. So I just went under that because I didn't want to charge people full-blown retail for what they would go anywhere else. Same with tables and all those things. So that's kind of where we went with this. Tents could probably be higher. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Tents cost us $100 to replace every single one. We're charging $5 on this form, but at the same time, realistically, we don't get broken every single time. So what is the right amounts? I honestly couldn't tell you. I know that it would be good if we could replace some tents here and again. So that's kind of where we're at. When we started the community center stuff, it was the same thing. We couldn't come up with what a good deposit amount was. And we kind of just went with a middle ground on it. We ended up settling at about $150 to $250. And that's not going to fix every damage in that building. If they spill coffee or Kool-Aid or whatever on the floor. But at the same time, it will help us repair some of those things if it gets broken. So that's kind of where we were with that too. So,
well, Dave, getting back to this, what I would say is that's another thing, in the same vein of saying that we need to have some legal liability built into this for people who abuse the process and abuse the city logo. I would also say we need to have a deposit, and I would do a hefty deposit that comes back immediately, or maybe you don't even cash the check. You just take the deposit and it goes on hold so that you can refund it immediately once you've given back, they've done everything right. But I also think you need to have something built in here on replacement cost, because I know, like you said, the tents are $100. I mean, the picnic tables and chairs and so forth. So I still think there's some work there to be done regarding a deposit, information, language, also replacement cost language, and then also act of God language. So for instance, you got a tent set up, a huge tornado blows through. Well, that's not the person's fault. So maybe there's an act of God language in there too. But I think those things need to be included in this form. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Borough, your hand is still up. Would you want to?
Yeah, I was waiting. Yeah, I was waiting to say something to Dave. Dave, I think you used the right formula and the format to get these costs, because we don't want to price ourselves. I think Chief said that we don't want to outprice ourselves. But I do think that the overtime for the police officers need to be changed. And the other thing is you have to think about replacement costs. Whether we lose it every time we use material product, not necessarily somebody has to charge, but somewhere along the line, it ought to be built in that we have to replace these things every August anyway. So if we would add $1 or $2, whatever, to each one of those, you end up coming out. And that's what I do at PAC. I put the money in because we have to do the replacement in August. So you're already covered if it happens. It's just the way you do business. I appreciate how fairly you have brought these costs up. And so to keep people being interested in doing events here in our city. And that's the key. So thanks so much for what you put into it.
And truthfully, that's part of the reason we put the special permit fee in here of $500. I fully intend that we won't charge a block party $500. It'll probably be adjusted. But if it's a large scale event, that $500 can turn around and help us with some of that replacement cost as well down the road. So that was kind of the idea behind the permit fee section, because we're not really putting a number on that as far as for merchandise or actual tangible goods, but that would be something that could help us down the road. So
well done, well done.
Councilwoman Robinette, and then we'll move to Fran Griffin. You're muted.
Dave, I would like to say I really appreciate putting this together where it's consistent and everybody sees the same thing. I think a couple people have brought up different language in a contract. I'm sure you can find examples of those anywhere on the internet for any city. So don't spend hours trying to come up with your own, reuse somebody that's already got it working. But I really like that this is finally consistent and everybody sees the same thing. So job well done.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilwoman Griffin.
All right, Dave, I just got one last question, and it was in regards to the pricing. And so you mentioned earlier that, sometimes we kind of scared some folks off. I am concerned about, us putting prices on there that are subject to change. Only because I wouldn't want someone who does have a smaller facility or a smaller need, to look at our sheet and be like, this is above our price range. So I don't know what the resolve to that would be, but I'm just thinking ahead, and I'm like, I don't want to get somebody who's like, I can't pay $500 for something that they really wouldn't even, end up, because of the size of their event, wouldn't have. And so, like, what would be your suggestion in regards to that? Like, because I know that's something you thought about.
Oh, definitely. So automatically, when it comes to special events, that sort of thing, if it's anything under 50 people, I don't even push them to this. I tell them automatically, go get a pavilion. It's going to cost you $25. We got you taken care of. So if it's small scale like that, we already have them figured out. When it comes to this, our old application, there was actually an application fee, and they had to pay $50 just to fill the piece of paper out and send it in. Everything I've done so far to this point, I tell them, fill out what you can, and then we'll kind of go from there. And if you have questions, contact me. We'll walk you through it. We'll figure it out. But trying to be as transparent up front with them as we can, with it kind of going hand in hand through the process, so they don't feel scared, so they're not worried about paying too much, that kind of thing. And truthfully, I really do think there's going to be a learning curve. When it comes down to it, some of our larger events end up donating money to special things, and we don't want to inhibit them from doing that either. So it's just gonna be one of those things we kind of have to work through and figure out as we go. This was truly just a starting point and somewhere where we can kind of get on the same page. So
Is there a minimum amount? Like, is that noted what you said? Like generally people over, that would only do the 40. Like, can we put that at the very top or something, like, hey guys, if it's under this amount, you don't even have to go through this process to eliminate the confusion?
yeah, when you go to the website there under the special event section, that first top section actually outlined what scenarios you need to fill out the special event app and what you wouldn't. And one of them was 50 people and under, you can just rent the pavilion, blah, blah, and go that direction. So it is outlined there on the website. And if they call the community center, our front desk staff is also trained in that. Listen, if it's under 50 people, tell them to get the pavilion because it's only gonna cost them $25 versus special event is probably gonna be a bit of a headache for them. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chief Hampton, who's next on your agenda?
Yes, ma'am. So we're going to move, and first off, thanks, Dave, for doing that. Very well informative information needed. We're going to move to Bailey Mitchell, and this is going to be on a property restoration program. And, this program is to make sure that we get these houses that would be torn down. We're trying to make sure that we can get those filled with residents. And everything goes to our census, and that's what we're trying to do with this program, is get more people in our community. So Bailey, if you wouldn't mind, you can take over.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Hampton. And can I share my screen, Chris? I don't need to right this second, but just I'm gonna go ahead and start while you give me that. But so Mayor and City Council, thank you for taking the time to listen to me tonight. I'm just gonna, I hope you got the email with the memo attached. I'm kind of just gonna go briefly over that, and then and just basically for tonight, we're kind of going over the properties that we sent out in the RFP, and also which properties were applied for and which ones are being awarded. And we want to just give you a heads up that since this is the first time, we're kind of going through it with you ahead of time instead of drafting up the contracts and then bringing it to you. So that way we're all on the same page moving forward. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you now the RFP went out at the beginning of July. We received bids from 4 developers and 2 individuals who would like to own and occupy a home. So out of those, out of all those bids, we had bids for 12 out of the, or I'm sorry, 11 out of the 12 properties, or the original 13 that were on the RFP. One of the properties on the RFP was actually bought on Post 3rd. The taxes were paid for. So that property is no longer available to us through the program. With that, I am going to share my screen now and show you the properties that we have. So the properties, as I stated, there were 13 on the list. One of them was bought. So this is the 12 that remain. Some of these are city owned. So the lettering on the left-hand side, the left column, shows or tells you what the different ones are. The PD just means potential demo. The D means previous demolitions. And then the C is city-owned properties as well. So, and then all of the P's are Post 3rd properties, which we previously brought an ordinance to council for the property acquisition for those properties. So we're submitting that to the county as soon as actually tomorrow we'll be submitting that to the county, but we wanted to, again, bring this to you before we move forward with all of the next steps of the program. And so tonight, this is kind of just going over that. And so there is a 4 property limit per developer right now built into the program. And that is so we can give multiple developers the opportunity to show us that they can do the work and start developing relationships with us now. And that way in the future, we have no shortage of vacant properties and vacant lots to have these developers potentially redevelop. So if there's an interest there, we're developing a pool of developers that we can kind of communicate with and see what their interest might be in developing some of these future post-third properties that might not be on the list right now, but they might be in a few years from now. So this is kind of the list right now, and that is, I think, everything that I had to talk about. So, and the packet that we sent to you has all of the information, all of the developers, their qualification packets and their application packets with for each property, and then I also included pictures of the property and a map of the property on each one.
So Mayor and Council, if I could jump in for 1 second. What we also are doing is providing the packets to you. So at our next council meeting, you can ask the developers, because they will be there, any questions you do have. So that's why we want to bring the packets to you tonight, so you could study them a little bit and come up with any questions that you do have about a certain property. I know like 7454 Castro, there is concern around it, and I understand that. And this would be a great opportunity to talk to the developer and understand what he wants to do. And so if you see any property here that you have questions about, this is an opportunity for you to talk to the developer and find out if that's what you want us to do. You know, if you say, city manager, I don't want that 7454 Castro done, then we'll have to demo it.
Okay, Councilwoman Lipka.
So Bailey, you're and Chief Hampton, you guys are talking about these packets. And Bailey, you referred to an email in the beginning of July, which I'm going to go see. I'm going to pull that up again. I'm sure I looked at it when you sent it, but it's not ringing any bells right this minute. But the packets that go into the depth, have we received that yet? Because I'm not familiar with anything like that.
I sent it to Chris. Wait.
Well, I was going to put it in the
Send it
council
out?
packet. It's going to be part of the council packet. So I don't think they have received that full packet yet. So you'll be getting it tomorrow.
Okay.
How many, just out of curiosity, how many pages is that going to be? I mean, because we're talking, is that something that we need to come to the city hall physically and pick up? Because
yeah, well, one of them is 124 pages. Yes. So.
okay, so my question, I guess, is it's important information. Is this something we need to look at printing off for each council member, or because it's just a lot of information we got to cover? Any
Linda-
thoughts from other council members?
Yeah, Linda, is it not something you can look at on your
iPad.
monitor, iPad?
I'm just saying, I think it's going to be stuff we're going to have to hold on to and refer back to, and our iPads. They're long gone. So that's why I'm.
You breaking up, Councilwoman. We can't hear you.
Mayor and Council, what we could do is, if any council member wants to, we'll make them a packet.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you hear that, Councilwoman?
If you-
Lipka?
Yes,
Okay,
If you
great.
just send Eric an email, please, on who wants a packet, and then that way we'll make sure that everyone gets a packet. That needs,
Okay.
that wants one.
And it will be in the Dropbox. So if anybody ever needs to refer back to it, we will have it in the Dropbox as well.
Councilwoman Griffin?
Thank you. Quick question, Bailey. What's the max on the homes that can be developed for the developers as of right now?
So right now, the limit is a 4 property limit per person at any given time. So as soon as they finish the one of them, they could acquire another one. But it's really just 4 properties at any given time.
So why is it that we have somebody on there that has 8?
no, it doesn't.
So that was how many he applied for, and the ones that were highlighted were how many he was awarded.
Okay, thank you. And then the time frame, we had kind of talked about this before. The time frame allow for these houses that are on the demo list to actually be renovated, because these were houses that a lot of the neighbors had complained about and wanted to be torn down and things of that nature. So what is the time frame that you're allowing the investors to be able to redevelop these and get them up to par?
Yeah, so the time frame that we discussed before is kind of on the website right now. On the property restoration page, it's actually there's actually a like an overview page that's like a 2-page thing. But to answer your question, so the previous demolition properties, we are actually planning on getting those developers in the room and trying to get those contracts drafted as soon as possible. That way we can move forward with those. Since the city already owns those properties, we could take those to council for approval for Eric to sign the contract for us to enter into the redevelopment agreement. And we can expedite those faster than the property or the post-third ones, because once we submit to county, it could take up to 3 months for them to give us the ownership of that. So, but with the, in terms of the timeline, it kind of depends on how fast they can clear the title. So that's the first thing they'll do. We'll sign the quitclaim deeds to them, and they'll begin clearing the title. They'll also be required in the first 2 weeks to clean up the property, just the exterior. That way it kind of makes the block look a little bit better. And then once that title is clear, that's when they can begin construction. And then they have 6 months from construction, or from the beginning of construction, to finish it. And then after that, they have 6 months to get occupancy. So that's the time limit on that. Most of them are saying that it's only going to take them around 90 days, depending on supply chains. That's kind of the only hindrance that anyone has brought up right now. So.
Okay, so let me just clarify, just because you said 6 months from the time the construction begins, or 6 months from the time that they sign the agreement with the city?
Well, like I said, so it's 6 months from when they start the construction, because there's title clearing involved, and we don't know the specific timeline on that for each property. It's different for any, like if one property has 15 liens on it and one has 1 lien on it, the one with 1 lien is going to take less time, most likely. And I mean, sometimes these things go through the court and take a lot of time through the court. So the timeline really depends on the title clearing.
And the title clearing is based off of someone that's St. Louis County, right? Basically, the title clearing, or the title clearing company that they go through, correct?
Yeah. the developer hires a title clearing company, and they will have to just clear the title of any liens to make sure that they are the sole owner, because no developer is going to start construction before they
Right,
know for certain.
right,
And we wouldn't expect them to.
right. We wouldn't expect them to, but I'm just concerned about the time frame in between the time that we finish our process and the time that they have to get the title cleared, because at that point is the clock's not running until they actually start, versus us starting it ourselves and saying, hey, once we finish our last process, then our clock is starting. So I'm just trying to get clarity, because I'm just thinking ahead, and you might have somebody, like you said, they've got 4 properties and they're working on them one at a time. Well, that 4th property is just sitting there until they decide to do the title change. So is that going to be an area where we're going to leave it to them, or are we going to put hey, this is our start date of the 6th month effective this day, like, to make it clear?
Bailey, don't we require proof that they're actively like searching for the title? Like they have,
Yeah,
we
so
require proof for the title company. Like you have to show us a receipt that you're working with the title company within like a 2-week time period. Is that correct, Bailey?
yeah, so it's 2 weeks after they sign the quitclaim deed, they have to begin title clearing. So within those 2 weeks, they have to give us something in writing that states that they've already like signed an agreement with a title clearing company, whatever. We need something in writing that tells us that they've started the process. And then 2 weeks after they finish the title clearing process, we need them to submit a building permit. And many of them will most likely have that paperwork done already, because like I said, the title clearing takes a little bit of time. So I don't think that, I mean, this is why we're kind of calling this a pilot of this program, because this is really where we're testing the waters with some of these developers. And that's why there's a limit. Also, we're taking as many precautions as possible to make this process as smooth as possible. And I don't foresee too many issues in terms of timeline. And like, that's why I keep saying it really depends on the title clearing. And I don't know that there's much else that we can do in terms of like setting a specific date for them to start if they don't have ownership of the property.
But I think that the 2-week time period from when they, that kind of, I think, solves the concern that you had about them waiting till they get to that 4th house. They have to kind of apply once they get the agreement within those 2 weeks. So they really should be applying for all 4 houses at the same time. They're not holding it off to they finish the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd house.
Right. They
Right.
definitely, well, I mean, I would think so. I would hope if you're working on 4 houses at a time, you've got the ability to be able to do that. I'm
Yeah.
just thinking ahead, and I'm just like, depending on what developer decides they want to do it, we should, I do believe we should have a start. We should have a time clock on that, especially when it comes to these houses that were on the demo list. Like I do think we should have one. And then my last question is in regards to, and I'm gonna be done. My last question is in regards to the spreadsheet that was posted. We had talked about, well, I'd mentioned before, just making sure that these developers that are taking over these properties are actually doing what they're doing. If they don't, is there a list that you all are going to be generating to say, hey, this is a person that should not be taking advantage of the restoration program because they didn't go through it, they didn't follow through with what they were saying they were originally going to do?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. So that is something that we're going to work with our new supervisor, Gene, at code enforcement. He's going to be also one of the ones that are just working on the property restoration. So that way it's not going to get mixed up with other inspectors. It's going to be one inspector working on all of them.
Okay.
And then that way he has a better vision and he knows what needs to be done in each property.
Okay, Councilwoman Burrows, she has a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I raised my hand the minute the question was up because we had talked about that before. And I had mentioned it the last time we talked about this, is that it is that lien, it is the title that causes the time delay. And we already have the time clock. The time clock is the 2 weeks. So you have to file, no matter if he had 10 properties, he would have to file, or she would have to file at the same time. So that means, and so actually they answered the question while they were talking, but we talked about that before. And I just gotta say, Bailey has really done a great job. I've been following him every step of the way that he's been updating all of his paperwork. And I've told you this yourself to your face, Bailey, you've done a fantastic job. For this to be a pilot, I don't see it getting any more final than what it is now. Job well done.
Thank you, Councilwoman Burrow.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, can I say one more thing as well?
Yes.
I know Bailey touched on it early, but also they are going to be responsible for cleaning up the yard and cleaning up the exterior of the place, so we can get it looking in a little better shape while they're doing all this title search or everything else. So that's one of our priorities. You know, just like Castro, you know, the gentleman asked us if, you know, because of the way it is right now, could we potentially put a little fence up around it? And that's something that we're working on with Elliot right now to see if we can put up a fence right at the property, because we don't want nobody going in the house if we're demoing portion of the house. So that's something that we have to work out with Elliot at this time because of our codes. So I just want to let everybody know that the properties are going to be taken care of once they are awarded.
Great, great. Councilwoman Griffin, you still have your hand up. Did you forget to take it down?
No, I did not. I'm glad John said that, because that brought me to a question that I had about the given the 2 weeks to be able to clean the property. Like, is that something, if we can't make them do anything until they get the title in their hand, like, will we be putting ourselves in a position to say, hey, you got to start cleaning up within 2 weeks of a property that's not in their hands yet?
Bailey, you want to touch that one, or when we go?
Yeah, so the quit claim deed gives them ownership of the property. It just doesn't give them full ownership. That's what the title clearing is for. They have to clear the title of any lien. So let's say the gas company owns or has a lien for $2,500 because the previous owner didn't pay their gas bill on time. That if the lien gets high enough, that gives them the ability to challenge or petition a court to essentially say, I have rights to this property. And so those kinds of different kinds of liens give you different kinds of rights to the property. And that's what the title clearing process does. So the quit claim deed gives them the ability to enter the property and do things to the property. But like I said, they're not going to invest thousands of dollars on the property. But cleaning it up, like, I mean, anyone can go in and clean up. But basically, we're just saying they're cleaning up the exterior and making it look a little bit better than it does currently.
Okay, and I did see Councilwoman Lipka. She had her hand up.
So I guess the thing
There
I'm
she
just,
is.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm just saying, I guess the thing I'm just trying to figure out is, I mean, a lot of this has already been discussed. A lot of this is in the paperwork that we've gone over, that Bailey's worked hard on, Chris has worked hard on, everybody's worked hard on. And I think all of these things have been thought through very, very well. So I just feel like we just need to let this move forward and move along with it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chief Hampton?
Yeah, so our goal is at the council meetings, make sure every developer's there so that you will be able to ask the questions. So you will have the packets tomorrow in the agenda. And if somebody needs it printed out, please let Eric know, and then we'll get that done. But I think the biggest thing is, if you have a concern about a specific building, this is our time to ask those questions.
Okay, Councilwoman Robinette.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm really happy that we finally got a pilot program going, that we've, these are 10 properties that aren't going to be demoed. I think that like this is something we've been hoping for a long time. It's better to have them rehabbed or rebuilt than another empty lot for the city to mow. So I really appreciate everybody's effort in getting this put together. I know this is no small task. So thank you to everyone, and I look forward to seeing how this pans out, and I hope these developers really step up and get it done, and like make the pilot successful and a lot of more investors come in. So well done.
You know what?
Okay, Councilwoman Noah, she has her hand up.
Just right quick, the house at 302 St. Louis Avenue, is that the one with the tree that's like halfway in the yard in the house?
I'm not 100% certain, but I can check tomorrow and make sure that I'll get you an answer. I believe it probably is, but it may just be a little bit of roof damage. And a developer knows more than we do, more than I do. Yeah, but I will find out for sure and make it with you, Councilwoman.
Okay, Councilwoman Linda Lipka.
Okay, I'm just real quick. I just want to point out a little additional bonus that came from Bailey's hard work. And that is, we had 13 properties, but when that list came up, somebody jumped in, paid all the liens, paid all the taxes, and bought the property. So took it off of our plate. So that's even another added benefit that we're already automatically immediately seeing. So good job, guys.
Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to bring up is, this is like big city stuff. We're a smaller city, and we made this program to fit our city. So just to be able to do that, Bailey's done an incredible job.
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. Thank you, Bailey. Chief Hampton, what's next on your agenda?
There would be the PSA, but I would like to see if we could potentially postpone that. I think we need more time, and I know we were talking about doing a 7:30 hard stop. I know the PSA is going to need some more time, and plus we need a couple more people here that would be doing some of the work on the PSA that could not make it tonight. So I'm asking council to see if we can remove that from the agenda and set that for another night.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, agree. At this time, Chief Hampton asked us to look for a date where we could have the public hearing for the CDBG. The contract goes in August the 31st. It needs 10 days after. So
I went to Eric today. They're all closed.
Can we get the background quieted down? I can't hear what you're saying. Can we get the background quieted
Linda.
down?
Okay, she got it.
okay, she's muted. Okay. Okay, John had asked us to come up with a date that we can have a public hearing. The last day for the CDBG application to go in is August the 31st. So we need to have a hearing at least 10 days after the application goes in. So has anyone looked at their calendar and come up with a date at least 10 days after the application has been submitted?
So 10 days after August 31, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that'll work.
Well, why couldn't we do it during our first council meeting in September? I think that's the 14th of September.
Is
That's
that
a
more
good
than
day.
10 days?
It'll be 10 days.
Right.
So we could do it September 14th in our council meeting, correct?
Yes, put it on the agenda for that. That's a question.
Hampton, you was going to say something?
I was going to ask Chris if that's possible, or does this have to be a special meeting by itself?
It doesn't have to be a special meeting by itself, but it can be anytime. It has to be 10 days from when we post it. So we could post it, like, let's say we wanted to post it on Friday, we could post it and then we could meet the 30th, let's say, but it has to be in, like the mayor was saying, it has to be in like within 10 days of like the 31st. We have that deadline that we have to get it in a little bit sooner. So
So it's within 10 days. Okay.
Yeah.
September the
So-
14th looks good to me.
But I guess what he's saying though, Mayor, is if we do September the 14th, we're not within the 10 days because we're actually
Right.
longer.
Right,
We,
We're
have
out
to
to
be
we
far.
can put, excuse me, Mayor,
Go
we,
ahead.
we can put our application in. We have to have a hearing.
Yeah.
After we've already been told we can put our application in, we just need to have a hearing on it, and that could be after the 30th. So.
Yeah, it can be after the 30th. Yeah, it just has to be like within that 10 days. Am I misunderstanding? Did it change, John?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Can we double, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask, can we double check on that special hearing? Because if I'm not mistaken, special hearings do have a certain process that they have to take. And I don't know if like we would have to do it like after the city council meeting versus within it.
We've
Yeah.
always done special hearings during the meetings.
The
Right.
public hearing portion, I believe it can fit in, it classifies as a public hearing, and like the special, like the public hearing portion of the council meeting, like Elliot does with the SUPs, the special use permits, and
Mhm.
I can double check with Octavia tomorrow, but from what I understand, it could fall into that special or the public hearing portion of the agenda.
I think
So,
so.
Chris,
Yeah.
could you do us a favor as a council member?
Yeah.
If after you double check, could you send us all an email and let us know what the exact date timeline is that we have to pick in from? Because right now,
Yeah.
I think that's where the confusion is. So if after you do the checking and you find out, okay, it has to be 10 days, or it could be the council meeting and the first council meeting in September, shoot us an email. And if you need input from us, then we'll be committed to answer you.
Yeah, I will send an email out. I'll talk to Octavia first thing in the morning, and we can review, and we'll send an email out tomorrow morning. But I know it's 10 days after, from 10 days after we post it, and it has to be close to the 31st, closer to the 31st. But I'll confirm everything tomorrow, and I'll double check what Councilman Griffin was saying about the public hearing portion. There are very specific rules in the application that we got, and it specifically lays out the wording and everything that we have to post it. But from what I was told, we were allowed to use it during that council meeting, public hearing portion of the council meeting. But again, I'll confirm with Octavia, since she's done this probably 20 times now since she's been a city clerk. So.
Hey, this isn't our first rodeo with this, and I don't
Yeah.
remember such discussion before, so.
Right.
I can read you what Don Boy sent me. He said the person from the county, he said they would grant us the extension as with other cities, but we need to turn our application in, and then we need to inform the community as soon as possible about the hearing. So we can turn the application in, but we need to inform the residents or the community of the hearing. So once Chris figures out when we can do that, we can post the hearing, and then that's posted and done.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. At this time, we don't have anything else on the agenda. I'm requesting a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So move. Second.
Councilwoman Linda Lipka, move. Councilwoman Burrows, second. Are you ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Have a good night.
Eric, this is Tony Barrow. Before you hang up, I just want to welcome you to the team.
Thank you. And then,
Yeah.
council, please send out times to me via email or just give me a call about when we can all meet one-on-one.
I gave you a call. I'm looking forward to you calling me back.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. John, would you give me a call? Chief, you're so used to me calling you Chief. I call you John, you don't answer. Give me a call. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Nick Kessler, I need to hear from you.
Have a good evening.
Good night. Chris, well done. Thank you.